solving two-step equations. A little more interesting here. So let's go ahead and let's just dive right in. First thing I want to talk about is this idea of inverse operations. So I want you to write that down. Inverse operations and what each of these different operations entail. Okay, so and what the opposite is. So when we have an operation of addition, okay, or subtraction or multiplication or division, it's sort of going forward. It's going one direction, and what we want to talk about is what happens if I go backwards. What happens if I want to undo that operation? So let's say I added something and I want to undo it. I want to reverse it. Then I'm going to subtract. Okay, and then again with subtraction, I would end up using addition. And multiplication, in order to undo multiplying, I'm going to divide, and to undo division, I'm going to undo multiplication. So make sure you, I would pause the video and make sure you write those down. All right, and let's move on. Okay, so first thing I want to do is this, just real quickly revisit. This was a Khan Academy we did, and I want to know if you can check your work. So let's say we were going to go ahead and we are going to plug X into this. Okay, well, first what I want to talk about is what are the steps? If I know that X is equal to 3 and I want to test it, what is it that I need to do in order to check it? So go ahead and answer the questions that are up on the side now. Okay, so let's go ahead. Well, let's try this. Okay, we know that X is equal to 3, so we're going to do 5 times 3. And then add 9 here, and we'll see it's equal to 24. Okay. Well, hopefully what you decided here is you looked at this and you said, okay, and because of my order of operations, I need to multiply anything before I can add it. So we'll do 5 times 3 is 15, and then I'm going to add 9, and I'm going to equal 24, right? This is, if I know what X is, I know I'm going to multiply, and then after I multiply, I'm going to add. Okay, and then 15 plus 9, does that equal 24? It does. Okay, and X equaling 3 does work for this equation. Okay, but again, it's the order in which we did this that was the main concern here. So let's do this one, right? So what I want you to do first is I want you to decide what are the first two steps, or what are my 2 steps that I would use if I knew what X was, right? From X to get to 14, go ahead and tell me what those steps are. All right, so looking at this, I know that first I'm going to multiply by 3, right? I'm going to take whatever X is, I'm going to multiply by 3. That's what this says. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to subtract 7. And once I've done that, it gets me to 14, okay? So in order to reverse this, right, this is sort of the end of the story. I know how the story ends, and I want to know, how do I get back, okay? So in order to get back, I'm going to undo these steps. I'm going to reverse them, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to type in, what do you think the first 2 steps are? Okay, go ahead and answer those questions now. Okay, so hopefully you decided when you did this, if I start at 14 and I'm going to reverse this, I need to undo the last thing I did first, okay? So just like, let's say it's 3rd period, and you realize, oh, you left your phone somewhere, okay? Or wait, no, that's a bad example. Let's say you left your assignment notebook somewhere. And you go, oh man, what am I going to do? Well, what the people do a lot of times is they retrace their steps. So they go to the last place they were first, okay? You wouldn't go back to 1st period. You'd go, okay, well, I'm going to go back to 2nd period, and if it's not there, then I'll go to 1st period. Okay, and that's the same idea here. Okay, so I'm going to undo the subtracting 7 first, and so that means I'm going to add 7. And then once I have an answer there, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to divide that whole thing by 3. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind here. And what we're going to do is we're going to now apply that. Okay, now I'm going to show you this a little bit differently, because next year when we start teaching we have a new curriculum coming, and the new thing we're going to be using teaches solving equations a little bit differently. So I want to make sure I go over it with you now. Okay, so before what we did is we did everything straight down. Now what we're going to do is what's called the linear style. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take 3x, right, minus 7, okay, and that equals 14. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take I'm just going to rewrite it from now. Okay, so I know the first step I'm going to need to do is I'm going to have to add 7, right? Because I want this to go away. So I'm going to take 3x, subtract 7, and then I'm going to add 7. okay? And I'm going to put that on the left side, and then on the right side, I'm going to take 14, and this was the new thing I added, right? This piece right here, this was the new piece I added, so that's going to have to get added here, okay? Notice I'm doing the same thing to both sides. I'm increasing both sides by 7. Okay, well now if I do this, 3x minus 7 and then plus 7, these are opposites, so that becomes 0. So I'm left with 3x is equal to 14 plus 7, so I get 21. And if you remember from the previous slide here, okay, we added 7 to both sides, and then we're going to end up dividing by 3. Okay, so now what am I going to do? I have 3 times x is 21, so I'm going to rewrite this, right? I'm going to divide this side by 3. I'm going to divide this side by 3, so I get x is equal to 7. Okay, and then let's go ahead and check this. So if I do 3 times 7, okay, and then I subtract 7, will I get 14? Okay, well 3 times 7 is 21. And 21 minus 7, does that equal 14? Well, 21 minus 7 is 14. Both sides of that equation are the same. Therefore, x equaling 7 is the correct answer. Okay. All right. This one I've already pre-filled it. Okay. So what we have here is we've got x plus 4. Okay. And then I'm going to add 1. And it's going to get me to 5, right? So I have x. If I knew what x was, I'd first multiply by 4. Then I would add 1. And this would get me to 5. Okay. Now, this isn't just because I'm going from left to right. Remember, the whole idea here is you have this thing called, right? PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Remember, this is parentheses, exponents. You multiply and divide from left to right. We add and subtract from left to right, okay? We do both of these things at the same time. Both of these things at the same time, all right? Okay, so now that I know what it is that how to get to 5. If I were already at 5, in order to get back to x, I'm going to subtract the 1, right? I'm going to undo that step, subtract 1, and then I'm going to undo multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. That'll take me to x. Okay, so let's do that here. So the first thing I needed to do was take 4x plus 1, and I needed to subtract 1. Okay, and then I'm going to take 5, and I'm going to subtract 1. Okay, now some of you might not like this idea of subtracting 1. You could also do 4x, okay, plus 1, and then we could say plus a negative 1. Okay, and maybe you like the positive and negative equaling 0, which I could do 5 plus negative 1. Okay, either way, it's going to get me to 4x, right, up 1 and then down 1. Gets me to 0, back to 4x just there, and then 5 minus 1 is 4. Okay, same thing here. These two here, this cancels out to 0, and then I have 5 plus negative 1. Okay, and again, the whole idea is same thing I'm doing to both sides, right? This is the only new thing. I have 4x plus 1, that's still here. I have 5, that's still here. I'm doing the same thing to both of these sides. Okay. So now what am I going to do? Well, in the previous example we saw we were going to divide by 4. So we'll take 4x divide by 4. We'll take 4 by 4, and I get 1x is equal to 1. Okay. Let's go ahead and try it out. If I do 4 times 1 and add 1, will that equal to 5? Let's go ahead and try. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1, does that equal 5? 4 plus 1 is 5, does that equal 5? And yes, it works. Okay, so x is equal to 1. Let's try another one. All right, so let's go ahead. You try this one, and you tell me what are the steps from x to 1. Go. Okay, so I have x. The first thing I want to do here is, if I know what x is, I would divide by 2. And then once I was done with that, I would go ahead and subtract 3. That would get me to 1. All right, so now what are the steps to reverse that? Okay, so if I start at 1 and I want to get back to x, I would undo minus 3 or down 3, then go up 3. And then, undoing dividing by 2, I would multiply by 2. And that would take me back to x. So let's put this into action. Okay, we need to add 3, then multiply by 2. So I'm going to rewrite this. Whoops. So x divided by 2 minus 3, and then we're going to add 3 equals 1 plus 3. And notice I put this afterwards each time, right? Same thing. Only thing that's different here is this plus 3 this plus 3, everything else is the same. 1 matches, x divided by 2 minus 3, this matches, okay? Same thing on both sides. So we'll go ahead, we got x divided by 2, right? Net down 3 and up 3 is 0, so that I'm just going to have x divided by 2 is equal to 1 plus 3 is 4. Okay, well now in the previous one we said we were dividing by 2, so now we're going to multiply by 2. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply it by 2, and I'm going to take this side and I'm going to multiply by 2, which gives me x is equal to, right, 4 times 2, so x is equal to 8. Let's check our answer. Okay, if we plug in 8 and we divide by 2, then we subtract 3, it's going to equal 1. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 minus 3 is equal to 1. 1 does equal 1. It therefore checks out. All right, we are on a roll. Go ahead, you tell me what are the steps from x to 1 on this one. All right, so hopefully you saw that you're taking x and you're dividing by 4 first. Then you're going to subtract 8, okay, or go down 8, and that's going to get you to 1. So what are the steps to reverse this? Okay, well my first step is going to be adding 8. That's going to undo going down 8. And then instead of dividing by 4, I'm going to multiply by 4. So add 8, multiply by 4. Okay, let's go through. Why don't you go ahead and try solving this one? All right, x divided by 4 minus 8, or down 8. I'm going to go back up 8. That's what we said to do. And then I have 1 plus 8. All right, again, this is the only thing that's new. Everything else matches up. It must match up, okay? It has to be the same. I've got to be able to do the same thing to both sides. So then I have x divided by 4, right? Some number broken into 4 groups is going to get me 9 in each group. All right, so next thing we said, we multiply both sides by 4. So we're going to multiply this by 4 and this by 4. Okay, so x is going to be equal to 9 times 4 is 36. All right, so let's try it. 36 divided by 4 minus 8, does that equal 1? 36 divided by 4 is 9. 9 minus 8 is 1. 9 minus 8 is 1. Yes, it is. And there we have it. We are good to go. Okay, you know what? Let's try it. There's one more good one in here, I think. Maybe we'll do that one. We'll try come back. No, let's try this one. Actually, no, don't worry about this one, okay? We'll have plenty of time to do practice, and this video is already about as long as I need it to be. Bring any specific questions you have, okay? Targeted questions. Say something like, I don't understand this part. And then hopefully you'll have a better understanding of how to do two-step, and we can get into some more interesting problems with that. Okay.